Hello, welcome to Tales from the House. Today, the 20th of April. I have two events for you today, and they're both very fun. At least I hope they are for you. So, let's get on with it, shall we? Today, in 1961, we have the first untethered outdoor public test flight of the rocket belt. The rocket belt, yes. We might know that under a different name, the jetpack, but it was originally called a rocket belt. Now, 1961, you say? Yes, I know, because I'm probably a bit like you. See, my first memory of a rocket belt was the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics, where we saw this. They flew around the stadium, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds, half a minute, something like that. And I was utterly mesmerized as a child. This is what space flight would be like. You can be an astronaut like this, and maybe we'll all travel like this. It was genuinely amazing. So to discover that actually jetpacks were first publicly demonstrated outdoors 23 years before this is quite amazing. That's quite a long time when you consider that flight was only at the start of the century in powered flight. In any case, let's investigate, shall we? Because it was originally built, there you are, 1961, by Bell Aerosystems. And here is a poster advertising their rocket belt. It's pretty much identical to what we saw in 1984 Olympics, isn't it? And you might be thinking, Bell Aerospace? Who on earth are they? Well, I think you probably should know them. This here is the device that they built. And you can see on the back there, maybe if you've got a large enough screen, it says Bell Aerospace. And you can see where they held it on and the tanks full of fuel. Well, Bell Aerospace are very famous. Although in 1961 they developed the rocket belt, they had also already developed this. This is a plane you should know. This is the Bell X-1, which is the first plane ever to break the sound barrier, and did so in 1947. Chuck Yeager was the pilot for this, and if you've seen the film The Right Stuff, it's all about those people who, take NASA and the USA up to the space flights, and it's all about these test pilots. This is the Bell X-1. Quite a short wingspan, really, but you can see this plane today. It's in the American Space and Flight Museum in Washington, D.C. I have seen that, and it's quite small, much smaller than you imagine. The first plane to go over the speed of sound. So, Bell Aerospace are a reputable company, and they are, in 1961, delivering on a government contract, which is Operation Grasshopper, so not Operation, Project Grasshopper. And that's what they're doing, to develop a jet belt, a rocket belt. Now, here is a picture of the first flight. This man here is Harold Graham, who worked on the team, but he didn't develop it. He was just the man who was doing the tethered test flights. In other words, he was held from a crane whilst he tested it so he couldn't fly off into the wall like Iron Man does, I suppose. When he's testing his stuff, he was tethered. But this today, the 20th of April, 1961, was the first outdoor untethered flight by this man. This man had only ever driven a car before. He's not a top-class scientist, so quite amazing that he gets to do this. Also, probably quite dangerous. There is footage of it on YouTube if you want to go and see it. And the first test flight was only about a foot off the ground and on fairly flat ground in upstate New York, not far from the Niagara Falls. But you can barely see him in the first test flight, and he couldn't have seen anything himself either because the condensation covered his glasses. And you do wonder, if you look at the footage, he's going to go into some journalists or something like that, or perhaps he's going to explode. I mean, there's a small part of you I know that is kind of hoping that that happens, but it doesn't. It's all, fairly dull and clouds of gas because it was powered by hydrogen peroxide mixture. In any case, there you are today. It wasn't the only flight that they did. They tested it in front of the Pentagon, and they also tested it in front of JFK. They showed it going across water. They showed you able to leap giant buildings. This is the stuff in 1961 of science fiction, and here it is. The news reporters at the time thought, this is going to change life. This is going to deliver on that Army Project Grasshopper. We're going to have super soldiers in the battlefield. We're off into space, just like science fiction. We're going to fly around, no more cars, no more trains, and it's going to be amazing. Well, of course, all of these things never happened, and the army never took their contract up on it either. Why is that? Because you can't carry enough fuel to go very far. This only had a flight time of 21 seconds, which I suppose, if you're Sean Connery in the film Thunderball in 1965, is enough time for a dramatic escape sequence from the top of a building, and some very terrible acting whilst you're in front of a screen. That's where you see it. And you think, oh, well, yes, I do remember that now. So you did know that the jet belt was around before 1984. Amazing stuff. Well, there you are. Today, 1961, the 20th of April, the Bell Aerospace rocket belt was tested outdoors for the very first time and made global news. At least we're not talking about something stupid like a flying car. Oh yes, that is a real picture. That is the Convair Model 118. And this is a picture of it flying in 1947. But that's for another day, surely. Let's get on. What else today? Well, we've got the first ever detective novel published. And you might be thinking, oh, I know this already, Dalton. Yes, I know. Sherlock Holmes, Arthur Conan Doyle. No, you're quite wrong. He's not the first detective, and not the man who defined, well, he may well have defined the genre, but he didn't create it. No, in fact, we're going to go for this man here. This is C. Agustin Duper, and he first appeared today, April 20th, in a short story in 1841, written by this man, Edgar Allan Poe. I'm sure you've heard of him, American writer. And yeah, you might be looking at this picture thinking, is there something wrong with his head? Because I did the same thing. But I assure you, I can't really find a better picture of him. He perhaps just looks a bit weird, especially in this picture. In any case, Edgar Allan Poe is the man who created the detective story. And he created all of the tropes that go with it. In this book here, which was published, it's not a book actually, it's a short story, The Murders in the Rue Morgue. And it was published, first of all, in this magazine, today, 1841, Graham's Magazine, which was an American monthly magazine, and it was a short story. Now, you might be thinking, I've never heard of this. Should I go read it? Well, you probably should, because it set up all of the tropes that Sherlock Holmes would use later on, and Poirot and everybody else. What did they set up that is still done? Well, it set up that a personal friend narrates the story. It set up the brilliant detective who acts independently in sort of crossed lines with the bumbling policeman. It set up the idea that the reader could follow along the discovery of the clues and had a chance, if you were as brilliant as the novel character, to solve the mystery, which of course you never are. And it also set up the dramatic finale where the detective tells you who did it and what happened when everyone's gathered together, and then the explanation follows. So all of these are C. Agustin Duper in Murders at the Rue Morgue. And all of those are classic detective story tropes that we would know. And they began here today with that short story by Edgar Allan Poe. It's also, he was also the person to write the first locked room mystery. That idea where, how did they die? The room was locked, they went to bed, no one went in, no one went out, what happened? That sort of idea. So there you are. Those are our two little nuggets from history today. The first ever outdoor untethered flight of a jet belt, and the first ever true detective story published in Graham's Magazine by Edgar Allan Poe, 1961 and 1841. And all we need, if only we could combine those two things together and have some sort of flying detective, and perhaps if we could have some sort of rocket hero or something like that, then we'd have it all, wouldn't we? Well, there you go. That's all for today. I'll see you tomorrow for the 21st of April. You take care. Oh, and remember, subscribe down here. And yesterday's video, if you missed it, which is all about sex with Mae West. Such a great title. You've got to go watch that. Down there. Take care. See you tomorrow for the 21st of April. Bye-bye.